Did Sterling's stuff arrive? Where is it?
When my husband Keith asked, I casually replied, "The stuff? Oh, you mean those big boxes that came the other day. I sent them back because there was no place to put them. That happened yesterday." Angry at the sudden delivery of so many packages, which seemed like some kind of harassment, I had sent them all back to Sterling's place.
What? Why would you do that? Sterling and his family are moving in today.
I didn't know that. Hearing Keith's shocking statement, I involuntarily screamed. That was the beginning of my days of hell. My name is Virginia, and I'm 72 years old. Currently, I live in a detached house with my husband Keith, enjoying our retirement. We have 2 children, our son Sterling and our daughter Margaret. Both are independent. Sterling, 44, is married and lives with his wife Cassandra. Margaret is 40 and single. Margaret is reliable, but Sterling can be a bit carefree and irresponsible at times. Cassandra, his wife, has always been a source of worry for me. From the first time I met her, Cassandra was an unreasonable person. About 20 years ago, Sterling brought her home saying he wanted to marry her. Her name was Cassandra, and she looked like any ordinary girl, but her behavior was shocking. She ate an entire pizza meant for everyone by herself. After eating, she left a mess and just lay down on the sofa, showing a complete lack of manners. After Cassandra left, I suddenly warned Sterling. "Hey, isn't that a bit too rude? Is she really okay?"
It's fine. She might be a bit naive, but she's a good person.
Sterling's smile made me anxious about the future. Keith didn't seem to think there was a problem either. Keith and Sterling are alike, not thinking deeply about things and being somewhat careless. And then my bad premonition came true. A while after Sterling got married, he called asking for money because they were short. Sterling was supposed to be working at a decent company, so it was strange that he had no money. When I pointed this out, he said Cassandra had been spending a lot on trips, shopping, and beauty treatments. They were in trouble with payments since his bonus was still far off. Hearing this, I was astounded. Not only was she lacking in common sense, but she was also irresponsible with money. I decided it was best to speak up for the future. I asked Sterling to put Cassandra on the phone. "Hello, is this Virginia?" Cassandra answered the phone in a carefree voice, and it irritated me. "You've almost used up all the money for this month, haven't you? That's not good. You need to plan your spending better." As I scolded her, Cassandra began making one excuse after another. "But you know, cute clothes sell out fast, and I need to get them quickly. And to look good in them, I have to go to the beauty salon to lose weight. Then once I've slimmed down, I just want to go out and show off." I felt dizzy at her unbelievable reasoning. If you keep talking like that, you won't be able to sustain a living, anyway. As I spoke at length, Cassandra seemed to find me nagging, and her responses became more perfunctory. Eventually it was settled that I would lend them money this time, but I had never seen someone so lacking in planning. Despite my persistent advice about money management to Cassandra, it didn't seem to have any effect. As expected, similar incidents repeated several times. Each time, Keith and I helped them out with our meager earnings. Sterling and Keith, both carefree, would say things like, "Oh well, can't be helped," and indulge Cassandra. I was fed up with these days. Time passed, and Keith and I both retired and entered our 70s. It was some time after our pension life began. Lately, there were no calls asking for money, and I thought we could finally enjoy a peaceful retirement. But then, this happened.
Did Sterling's stuff arrive? Where is it?
When Keith asked, I casually answered, "The stuff? Oh, the big boxes that came the other day. I sent them back because there was no place to put them." I remembered what happened yesterday. I was angry at the sudden delivery of so many packages, thinking it was some kind of harassment, and sent them back to Sterling's place.
What? Why did you do that? Sterling and his family are moving in today.
I didn't hear anything about that. Why would you decide that on your own? Angered, I confronted Keith, who was lost for words. Just the thought of living with Sterling's family was terrifying. I was about to question Keith about how this came to be when the doorbell rang. At the door stood Sterling and his family smiling. I asked them what was going on. According to them, they continued to spend recklessly and were about to run out of money. Thinking that I would nag them if they consulted me, they asked Keith instead for financial help. But that also became difficult, so they decided to move into our house to save on rent. They kept it a secret from me until the last minute, fearing my complaints. Hearing this, my anger surged. I had been relieved that the money demands had stopped, only to find out they were just keeping it from me. My peaceful retirement was disrupted, and I felt gloomy. Ignoring how I felt, Sterling and his family started fussing about their missing belongings. I sent their stuff back. There was so much of it, it couldn't possibly fit in this house. They complained loudly about not having their clothes and other things. Finally, they said they wanted to buy new household items since it would be troublesome to retrieve what I sent back.
We're living together from today, so we have to help out a bit,
Keith said nonchalantly, defending Sterling's family. I was frustrated. It's not a joke. We're not working anymore. We're on a pension. I can't deal with this anymore. Angry, I stormed off, and Keith sighed and left the room. I thought he had given up, but it turned out he was giving Sterling money from his pension. Unbelievable. Giving them more money would only make them more dependent. And as expected, that's what happened. After that, Sterling and his family settled into our home, frequently expressing their desires for this and that, and asking for money. I didn't want to give them any more money, but Keith, being soft on Cassandra, seemed to help them despite thinking it was a bad idea. Cassandra is good at appealing to men. Thank you for this month, Keith, I would hear Cassandra say, and it made me incredibly angry. Each time I would lecture Sterling and his family, saying, enough is enough, but it had no effect, and they even began to think of me as stingy. Furthermore, they would quickly mess up whatever they bought, making the room dirty in no time. There was no space to even walk around. Because of this, I found myself cleaning all day long. In this house, I was the only one who did any cleaning. Keith couldn't do housework, and Sterling's family was always out playing. When they did come home, they would just say, I'm tired, and do nothing else. Really, I was the one who was tired. I had to clean constantly, and there wouldn't even be a place to sleep. Eventually, my back started to hurt. I am 72 years old after all, an elderly woman. Despite this, I had to clean tirelessly while Sterling, Keith, and the rest just relaxed and did nothing. I was utterly fed up. One day, I finally reached my limit, and that's when Margaret called. Margaret is a serious, dependable career woman, single but energetically working. She bought a spacious apartment and lives there alone. When I told her about the situation, Margaret was outraged. What? So they just moved in and started exploiting you? Unbelievable. Margaret, like me, has always disliked Sterling's irresponsible behavior and readily sympathized with my complaints. And thankfully she offered, Mom, why don't you come and stay at my apartment for a while? If you stay there, your back will only get worse. In my place, I've got a housekeeper, so you won't have to do any cleaning. Really? I feel bad about it. Margaret raised her voice in response to my hesitation. Don't worry about it, and Dad is too carefree about all this, not realizing how hard it is for you. You know, he's always been like that. Margaret seemed ready to go on, but we decided to discuss the moving arrangements for the day and leave it at that. After hanging up the phone, I felt a wave of relief wash over me. Just the thought of being able to escape from this house filled me with happiness. Deciding on this, I planned to tell Keith right away. First, I thought to bring up the topic of the house in our conversation. It really feels cramped in this house with 4 people, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does,
Keith murmured. Should I move out?
What? What are you talking about all of a sudden?
Keith was surprised. I've been having back pain recently, and I can't rest here. I'm going to stay at Margaret's for a bit.
What? But who's going to cook for us? And without you cleaning? We won't even have space to walk around.
Was he more concerned about their meals and the cleaning than my health? I was deeply disappointed and angered by Keith's attitude. Let Cassandra do it.
Cassandra is tired from work. You need to do it.
I'm not a housekeeper. I wanted to argue, but I realized it was pointless. Anyway, I'm going to stay at Margaret's for a while. When my back gets better, I'll come back. I said firmly and quickly packed my things. Sterling and his family seemed happy to have the nagging me out of the house. Keith appeared confused about what to do with the housework, but that was no longer my concern. With only a few belongings, I headed to Margaret's apartment. When I arrived, Margaret welcomed me with a smile. You made it, Mom. You must be tired. Take it easy. Grateful for Margaret's kindness, I decided to relax for a while. No more being chased by unnecessary chores. I could rest properly. No more irritation, just comfort. Then Sterling called. I had a bad feeling, but I decided to answer. Hello?
Mom. Actually, I need to borrow some money.
Sterling said as soon as he picked up the phone. What are you talking about? I can't lend you any money. Ask Keith, he's there with you. When I said this, Sterling replied nonchalantly.
Well, Dad's pension is tight this month. Cassandra spent a lot on shopping again, and my bonus is still far off.
It's your own fault. I was dumbfounded.
But it's actually because you sent back our stuff. We had to buy new essentials because of that, and we're paying for a rental storage for our belongings.
Sterling blamed me for their financial troubles. Indeed, I had sent their belongings back to their old address. But since they had canceled that lease, there was no place to store them, so they opted for a rental storage. They were too lazy to deal with their stored items, which always bothered me. Despite their own laziness costing them money, they kept blaming me. Margaret, who was listening to the phone call, made a disgusted face. Eventually, Keith came on the line.
It's your fault for sending the stuff back. Give us some money, and come back to do the cooking and cleaning. We're living off deliveries, and the house is a mess.
I don't want to do that anymore. I finally exploded in anger. After forcefully hanging up the phone, I turned to Margaret, who was nearby, and explained the situation to her. She was appalled. She knew Sterling's family was terrible, but she didn't expect Keith to side with them so much. Margaret, looking exasperated, suggested, You don't have to go back. Why not divorce Dad? I've been thinking about that. I felt a headache coming on. Keith had always been carefree and casual, but since siding with Sterling, and especially Cassandra, he seemed worse. He seemed to see me only as a housekeeper, and I didn't want to do chores for someone like that. The idea of a late divorce crossed my mind. After some thought, I realized I had my own life to live. I needed money to live, but if things continued, Sterling's family and Keith would just drain my resources. I made up my mind and one morning told Margaret, I've decided to get a divorce. Margaret was overjoyed when I told her. When I called Keith, he naturally objected, but it seemed he didn't care about me at all. He was more concerned about who would cook and take care of Sterling's family. I said, I can't deal with you guys anymore, and hung up. Despite several discussions afterward, the outcome didn't change. I talked to Margaret and decided to consult a lawyer. It felt extreme, but if they wouldn't agree to my terms, I had no choice. Margaret and I visited a law office several times, progressing with the procedures. One day, as usual, I was walking back to Margaret's apartment from the lawyer's office. Margaret was at work, so I was alone. After shopping at the supermarket, I reached the apartment and saw familiar silhouettes in the lobby. With a sense of dread, I cautiously approached, and indeed, it was Sterling and his family.
Mom, what are you talking about, wanting to divorce Dad?
Please, reconsider. They confronted me as soon as they saw me. Did you come here just to say that? The root cause is you guys asking for money. Sort out your own lives before complaining to others. As I spoke, they immediately became angry.
We know that. We're desperate. That's why we're consulting you. We heard from Dad that you're just hoarding savings. Planning to use it all for yourself, right? Just lend us some.
What are you talking about? Hearing their story, I learned that Keith, now short on money, had incited them by saying,
Virginia is stingy and hoarding money. Ask her for help.
Such an absurd claim. My savings were not substantial, and they were meant for my retirement anyway. I never intended to give any of it to Sterling and his family, who only squandered money. When I firmly refused again, Sterling and his family became even more heated and started insulting me. The conversation went nowhere. After a while, we ended up in an argument. Feeling embarrassed by the stares of passers-by, I wanted to leave the scene quickly. I'm divorcing Keith and not going back to that house, I declared, ignoring them and attempting to enter the elevator. But in haste, I lost my balance and fell. Ouch! It seemed I had hurt my back. A resident asked if I was okay. Sterling and his family, now uncomfortable, left hastily, saying,
Just come back home.
That night, I told Margaret everything upon her return from work. What? They were in front of the apartment? Yeah, I fell and my back hurts a bit. Maybe you should go to the hospital. You've been having back pain. Get it checked out. Following Margaret's suggestion, I decided to visit the hospital. Fortunately, it wasn't a fracture, but a minor bruise. However, the pain in my back, which had been troubling me for a while, resurfaced. I decided to attend orthopedic appointments for a while. I casually mentioned this to my lawyer. He said that the back pain, caused by being overworked with chores, could work in my favor for the divorce. Submitting hospital reports and receipts as evidence, my lawyer prepared various documents. Presenting these to Keith, I affirmed my decision to divorce. Keith reluctantly agreed, though he complained to the end.
What am I going to do about living now?
He signed the divorce papers while grumbling, as I heard from my lawyer. Sterling and his family pleaded with me, saying,
Please forgive what happened before and come back.
But I had no intention of listening anymore and simply ignored them. Eventually, everything settled, and the divorce was finalized. I could claim my back treatment costs, feeling thoroughly relieved. Keith, left with a meager pension, was exploited by Sterling's family and constantly lamented his lack of money. Relatives told me he wore dirty clothes and subsisted on instant noodles. Keith had always been poor at managing money. He was especially bad at saving. And this had been the cause of countless arguments since our younger days. I had managed our finances, but after I left, everything fell apart. Moreover, neither Keith nor Sterling's family could clean at all. As a result, the house quickly turned into a garbage dump. Neighbors apparently complained about a bad smell coming from the house. But instead of cleaning up, Sterling's family kept shifting the responsibility onto each other and fought constantly. Gradually, their relationship worsened, and frequent shouting could be heard from the house, Margaret told me as she passed by. Keith was quite distressed by the situation and even called Margaret, begging for help. But naturally, both Margaret and I just scoffed at him. I can't help but think it's Keith's own fault for not seeing through Sterling's family's sloppiness and continuously supporting them. Eventually, they ran out of money and decided to declare bankruptcy. As a result, their house, being owned, would likely be auctioned off. What happens to them now is not my concern. Currently, I live comfortably in a spacious apartment with Margaret. My back is getting better, so I've been participating in community circles and volunteering, enjoying my days. On weekends, Margaret and I dine out and relax. I finally started to experience a happy retirement, I thought, filled with satisfaction. For a while, I was unsure of how things would turn out, but now that the issues are resolved, I feel deeply relieved. In this world, there are people who, if shown a bit of leniency, will take advantage and keep making demands. It's better to avoid getting involved with such people, even if they are family. I want to remember this and continue living a peaceful life.